Well, we've got a highly requested video today. Boeing stock has been a very popular choice among many investors for a very long time, but the company has now seen some of the most difficult years in its history, and the result is that the stock has been suffering greatly. Now, I know that we're literally in the middle of like a market crash. I can't predict any of this day-to-day volatility, so by the time you watch this video, the stock might be up a huge amount, down a huge amount, I have no idea. But a lot of you have been asking me to share my thoughts on Boeing stock as it stands right now and how I feel about it as kind of like a long-term investment. So what we'll do in today's video is we'll take a look at what struggles are company specific to Boeing and how they're handling it, how that other global issue is adding even more pressure to Boeing, and what I think the future looks like for them. And of course, I'll let you know if I plan to buy the stock myself anytime soon. So it should be an interesting one. I hope you guys enjoy the video. Let's go ahead and get started. What's up everyone, my name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. By the way, I'm going to sound a little dumb in this video because I have to be careful with what I say. The last time that I made a Boeing video, it was about a year ago, and to this day that video is still you know what on YouTube. So I have to be careful with what I say. So when talking about those tragic events that have ruined like Boeing's reputation, I'm going to refer to those as the Boeing issue. And then when talking about that global issue that is causing the stock market to crash, I'm going to refer to that as the global issue. So Boeing issue for the Boeing situation, global issue for that thing that is causing the stock market to crash. But with that said, let's go ahead and start by taking a look at the company and the reasons why the stock has been falling, and then we'll transition over to what I think the future looks like for them, and I'll give my overall thoughts on everything that's going on. Okay, so just a quick intro into Boeing. They're extremely famous for being the world's largest aerospace company. In fact, up until 2018, they had the largest market share for basically creating jets and adding them to the global fleet, followed closely behind by Airbus, although Airbus does actually put out more commercial planes, which I'll show you in just a second when we talk about Boeing's recent downfall. But on top of also being a leading manufacturer of commercial planes, Boeing also creates a number of aircraft and systems for defense, space, and security markets. And as a leading defense contractor, they build a wide range of aircraft ranging from attack helicopters and fighter jets to even selling a number of UAVs, which stands for unmanned vehicle aircraft. So think of sort of like drones, for example. Now, in the space markets, they build a number of spacecrafts like transportation vehicles, rocket ships, GPS systems, space launch systems, and satellites, many of which are even used by NASA. In fact, they're even the primary contractor for NASA for the International Space Station. And because all of these systems and hardware are incredibly complex, Boeing is also able to sell a number of services that bring in recurring revenue for them, thanks to their expertise in these highly sensitive and highly specialized markets that are also seeing a lot of growth. And we'll talk more about that in just a second when we look at their future potential. But because these markets are so large and continue to get like even bigger, it's led to Boeing actually being America's #1 largest manufacturing exporter, as they sell to over 150 different countries, which is something that surprisingly not a lot of people are even aware of. In fact, there's such a large part of America's economy that the recent grounding of their most popular jets following those tragic events that we're not really allowed to talk about here on YouTube, so again, I'll just refer to it as the Boeing issue, is now leading to production cuts for those jets. And the result of that is that a few months ago, JP Morgan was estimating that the US first quarter GDP growth would take a zero point 0.5 hit, which is pretty significant because typically you only see a couple percentage points of growth to begin with. So half a point is pretty large, and it shows how important Boeing is to our economy. Now, of course, that was before the US economy basically went on lockdown, and now everyone is predicting a recession, and we may even already be in one, but you get the point that Boeing is a gigantic company with tons of influence on the economy. But sticking with the company specific issues, that Boeing issue has so far led to the company losing billions of dollars a quarter, while also sitting on over 400 grounded jets that they've even had to start parking in employee parking lots until they are cleared by the FAA to deliver them to customers. And speaking of employees, I haven't been able to find any reports yet of Boeing like actually cutting their own workforce, although you guys can correct me down in the comment section if you find anything. But one of their major suppliers in spirits has already cut almost 3,000 employees as a result, and that's coming off of course, that announcement that Boeing is halting production of the specific jet model involved so that they don't overwhelm their already massive backlog any further. And of course, that other global issue that is spreading has only made things worse as airliners are canceling flights and lowering orders. In fact, Delta, United, and American have all cut their capacity by 40% or more, while Delta alone is expected to ground about 300 planes, which is obviously a very large amount. As a result, even Airbus is likely to cut production of some of their wide body jets after reporting zero orders for the month of February, which is pretty significant. Which, by the way, Boeing desperately needs that larger jet demand to remain healthy because they need it to help offset the smaller jets that are grounded because of their own company specific issues. But as if this couldn't have come at a worse time for them, there are also reports coming out that the House committee in charge of investigating everything that's going on with the Boeing issue is not only blaming them for the way that they cut corners to get their planes out to the market faster in order to compete with the rival Airbus that resulted in, quote, jeopardizing the safety of the flying public, but they are also blaming the FAA for their approval process, claiming that there is a conflict of interest that is also jeopardizing the safety of the public, and have actually called for an overhaul to the entire process. Now, as far as progress goes, Boeing replaced their CEO back in December, and the new one has been leading the charge to work with those regulators to hopefully get their most popular jets flying again by the second half of this year. But with that global issue putting pressure on demand, any possible overhaul or at least delay to the approval process for the Boeing specific issue, that may result in Boeing's turnaround taking a lot longer than previously expected and their business struggling even more than it already has. Speaking of which, not only did their commercial aircraft orders drop in the past 2 years in a row, but they were also negative last year up through September. The result is that sales plummeted by close to 25% in 2019, while both cash flows and earnings per share both turned negative for the full year as a result. On the bright side, they are expected to rebound over the next 2 years with projected revenue growth of 14% and 24% respectively, but with everything that's going on right now in the global economy and with how much everyone is panicking and flights are getting canceled and airliners are reducing orders, it's possible that Wall Street may be overly optimistic on these projections. Although you wouldn't really know that if you were looking at the stock. So far, this year alone, Boeing stock has plummeted by almost 70%. That's pretty freaking crazy. I guess on the bright side, they're only down by less than 35% over the past 5 years thanks to a strong rally into 2019. But still, a nearly 70% drop in only a matter of months is pretty crazy considering how large and popular Boeing stock has been in the past. And if we zoom out to the past decade, we can see that the last time that Boeing traded this low was all the way back in 2013, so about 7 years ago. Now, you might be thinking, well, given a 70% crash, the valuation must be really attractive now, right? Well, not really, because even though the stock has crashed, their business is struggling so much right now that their earnings are still very low compared to the stock price. In fact, their forward PE ratio is still higher than 40, which is definitely not considered value territory. Now, obviously, you could argue that as soon as they start to turn things around, that valuation will come down very fast, but even their 5-year forward PEG ratio is still nearly 6, which is obviously pretty high. Generally, you want that ratio to be closer to 1 if the longer term outlook is favorable, but it just shows how pessimistic Wall Street is on Boeing's future performance, at least when it comes to profitability. Now, one reason that investors are really interested in the stock right now is the massive dividend that now yields over 8% at these prices because of the crash. But to be honest, I'm pretty worried about the sustainability of that dividend. The payout ratio is stretched really high right now at nearly 200%. And even though the CEO did say back in January that they will continue paying the dividend despite the grounding of their jets, he also said that it was, quote, unless something dramatic changes. And with everything going on in the world right now, I would assume that this counts as a dramatic change and that the dividend will get cut. Keep in mind that Boeing doesn't even have a very good balance sheet to begin with, which is crucial for getting through difficult financial times like these. But as you can see here, their debts have climbed pretty high at this point, and there's not a lot of cash to sustain it. And I know that their current assets are pretty high, but that number may be including orders for this year. And if airliners continue canceling orders, then I could see those current assets being dramatically lower. On top of that, new reports are coming out that Boeing's credit rating is being downgraded because of the weak economic outlook. And the reasons cited are specifically a cash crunch in this Barron's article, and then in this one from Yahoo Finance, they point specifically to airliners making cuts and canceling orders, which is sinking Boeing's credit rating to near junk status. In fact, things have gotten so bad for Boeing that they're seeking tens of billions of dollars in US bailout money for the aerospace industry and aerospace companies just to stay afloat. Needless to say, I think the dividend is not only risky, but I think it's very likely to get cut. Keep in mind that one of their major suppliers in spirits just slashed their dividend because of everything that's going on too. And to be honest, I don't know if Boeing can go around asking for a bailout when they're still paying dividends. I don't know the specific rules to that, but I would assume that the US would want them to cut all unnecessary spending before they're willing to actually bail them out. And I guess you guys can let me know down in the comment section if you know any more about that, but that's just kind of my opinion. Now, to be fair, when things do turn around, they could start paying that dividend again. And we know that in the past, when things were going at least kind of decently, they would increase that dividend by some pretty large amounts and pretty rapidly. And while that may take a long time, there are at least some positives to look forward to over the long term, as the markets that they compete in will likely continue to get larger. Now, I personally do think that Boeing is too giant of a company to disappear, and I also think that demand for their aircraft will eventually recover as the world becomes more globalized and travel ramps up again and continues to get more important. In fact, Airbus thinks that passenger and freighter aircraft demand will more than double over the next 20 years, growing by over 4% annually. Meanwhile, Boeing still operates in other markets that are literally worth trillions of dollars over the next 10 years, like defense and space systems and aerospace services. And when combined with commercial planes, it's estimated to be worth close to $9 trillion over the next 10 years, with services alone estimated to be worth over $3 trillion during that time, and close to half of that is actually for defense purposes. So what it really comes down to, at least in my opinion, is how much you believe in Boeing's future and how badly you want to be a part of it, and whether or not you're willing to invest in the stock right now during such volatile and uncertain times. Now, on one hand, I think a lot of people would argue that the stock hasn't been this cheap in a very long time, and they're essentially too big to fail, in the sense that a lot of businesses and employees and even the US economy rely heavily on the success of Boeing as a company. So over the long term, I think that they will have support, and I think that they will kind of turn things around and get back on top. But in the meantime, there are a lot of issues that they really need to deal with that are really hurting their fundamentals. Not to mention the reputational hit that they're taking, and these are all issues that I would like to see addressed more before I'm willing to kind of jump into the stock. Now, we could see some huge upswings, some huge downswings. I have no idea where the stock is going from here, at least in the short term. Again, long term, I think they'll probably be okay. But here in the short term, with the whole stock market crashing, I just don't think that I want to be adding a stock like Boeing that carries so much baggage and would stress me out, and I'd have to be paying so much attention to the day-to-day news, whereas I could be picking up some other stocks that are very reliable companies that don't have so many company-specific issues that are still being dragged down by this whole market crash, and I think are great values right now. So for example, I've been buying some Visa stock. I nibbled away at some more Amazon, even though that's already my second largest stock. Also picked up some PepsiCo recently, which I'll be talking about in a future video. I'm going to make a video where I'm going to update you guys on all the stocks that I've been buying. But and also I nibbled away at some AT&T. So some really like solid dividend stocks that I've been focusing on. But anyway, when it comes to Boeing, again, I don't think that they will just kind of disappear. I think they'll be fine over the long term. And maybe this was all kind of a buying opportunity, but I also think that they carry a lot of baggage and a lot of unnecessary stress that I just don't really want to be dealing with right now. I've got enough things to worry about with, like, the entire stock market crashing and my portfolio taking so many hits and me looking for where I want to be adding and things like that. I don't have the time to deal with all of the day-to-day issues of Boeing. So that's just for me personally. It's just not a stock that fits my portfolio at this time. Maybe it will in the future, we'll see, but I will continue to watch it, and I think it should be an interesting and developing story as we go on. But hey, what do you guys think about Boeing stock? Let me know down below in the comment section. Are you invested in them? Are you thinking about investing in them? Or is it a stock that you're just kind of staying away from? I would love to hear your thoughts down below. And don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Thank you for all the support. It means the world to me. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.